Alright, for my next project, I need a little bit of reorganization to do here. If we see up here at the top of my shop, I've got a string of LEDs that go across. They're not on right now. And if we come on over to this end, you'll see we have a couple of batteries. Those are powered off, these two batteries. Right there, sitting on the top of my cabinet. Up here is the solar charge controller, we can see right there. And if we follow the wires outside, the wires come up, they're going outside the shop over there in that corner. And if we move outside the door, up here we can see where the cables are coming out, coming down into the ground, underneath the walkway, to that junction box, and all the way over on the far side of the yard, we've got the solar panel that powers those two batteries. Now the problem that I have here, it's getting over here back into the shop. I used to have the batteries sitting on that shelf, and if you can see the discoloration of that 2x4 and some stains on the tar paper, that's from the battery acid coming out of these batteries. So we want to move those batteries outside. And what I'm going to do, let's go back outside here real quick. So over here in this area, which is pretty much useless for growing much because it gets very little sun, we're going to build ourselves a little battery stand. So let's get started with this project. Before I can model my battery stand, the first thing I had to do is model the battery. And here is the battery. To start my model, we're going to go through real quick how I built this model. To start, I went to the battery website and got the basic dimensions, and here is what they look like. And then I started the model. We're going to go over here and drag the end of part flag all the way up to the top to where I just created the model. That was real simple, just basic thing. Drew a sketch with the footprint of the battery and then extruded it to the height of the battery. After that, I had to build the towers. That was a little interesting to do these towers. I built the sketch at just two rectangles and extruded them up to the height of the towers. Then you can see I built the bridge that's in between the two towers. After that, I had to create a work plane. I have to turn this on so you can see it here. I had to put in this work plane here in between the two towers. And we can see that work plane is at 90 degrees to the bridge that goes across. Now after that, we drag it down. I put the shape of the towers. You can see the pattern there I drew on that work plane, and then extruded it to cut through the two towers and gave them their nice shape. Now going to the next, I drew a sketch on the face. Seems as though my computer's a little bit too busy right now and is not reacting quickly. That's when I'm doing this screen capture at the same time. It has a little bit of trouble keeping up with everything. Here we go. I just drew a rough sketch on the general profile of what goes in between those straps. So now I had to create another one, which is offset slightly on the other side. And I did that with a rectangular pattern, which I just patterned all of these entities, and I used this line right there as the direction for my pattern. And I just basically estimated the length. And it came out just fine. Let's turn that work plane off. We don't need it anymore. The next step is the cap. And as you can see, each entity I name as I go down so I know what they are. I drew the cap, representation of the cap, put a fillet to make it nice and smooth, and then just for a little bit more of accuracy, I kind of cut the bottom of the cap out. You can see here we've got a space underneath the cap. And that was done simply by making a sketch on the face of the top of the battery and then selecting the inside surface of the face and then just cut it out about 1/4 inch. Now starting on the terminals, I created the base of the terminals. And there is the lead coming out of the base of the terminal. And then it has 2 posts coming out. One of them is the actual terminal post, and the other one is where it's molded into the electrical post coming out of the battery. Of course, we can't see that at this version of the model. Put a nice fillet on one of them. Then I just extruded the post, added a stud on top of it, and then virtual threads on the terminals. And then just to make it a nice appealing look, I put a small fillet around the whole side. So there is my battery, and now I can start modeling the stand. To start building my forms for what this stand is going to look like, first I've got to get the batteries in the model. I've already opened a new assembly file, and now to get the batteries in there from a Windows folder, all we need to do is drag a battery over into the modeling environment. And there we've got my first battery. Now, I could have dragged another one over here, but to show other ways to get parts into the models, we could actually copy and paste that, and this would be Control-C to copy, and we move over here, and we can paste a new battery in there. Or another way to do that is over here in the browser bar, grab the battery and drag it over into the modeling environment. So now we actually have 3 batteries, but we actually only need 2. So let's back up one step. These batteries are going to be installed in basically this orientation, so we'll get them constrained flush across these edges. And the top. And I'm going to space them apart about 1/8 of an inch. And there we have our 2 batteries. I've already decided I'm going to want these 45 inches from the ground. So I need something here to represent the ground. So we're going to start a new work plane from the top of the battery. And we're going to just drag it down a little bit to start and put in there minus 45 inches. And zooming out, here we've got what the battery is going to look like. So I'm going to do something I've never done before, and we're going to see how this works out. I am going to cast in place a concrete stand for that. So the next step is I'm going to build the foundation where this stand is going to be placed and then constrain it to the ground that I've just added here. Starting on the foundation, of course, we have to start with a new part file. Sketch on the plane, and we're going to put a 2-point center rectangle on here, and I'm going to throw in a couple of temporary dimensions. I don't care what they are at this time. And we'll go back to the assembly file, take a quick measurement. So our foundation is going to be at least, well, let's just say that's 21 inches. And 7. So let's go back to our foundation. I'm going to throw in a 22 inch here, and the other one was 7. We're going to just 10 to make sure. And this is likely going to change by the time I get to the design finish, but this is a good starting point. We'll finish the sketch, zoom back out, and we're going to change the material up here to concrete. And then there we go. Took a little bit to think about that. And I'm going to go with 1.5 inch foundation. Now we're going to save that file as, of course, foundation. We'll close that. Now I can use the place command, and we'll wait for the, there we go, place the, and click foundation to put it in there, or I could go down to the folder, drag and drop it in. So we'll just place the foundation. And this is the surface of the ground. So we're going to constrain the foundation to the surface of the ground. And just in general, let's take a look at what our foundation looks like. And it's going to have to be a little bit wider, I believe, to allow for the walls of the stand to go down there. But front and back appear to be okay. But let's open up the foundation real quick. Let's add 2 inches. So there's our foundation in place for the batteries. Next step, we're going to build the actual stand that's going in here. Now that I have the basics of the design, the very, very basics of the design in place, I've got a foundation and about where the batteries are going to be, but when I started, I put this battery in place, which you can see over here is grounded by that thumbtack. But this is actually going to be a variable part. I don't want that one grounded. I'm going to want the foundation grounded. So we're going to fix that now. I'm going to grab the foundation and move it up to the top. Unground the battery. And we're going to place the foundation in the center of the assembly. We're also going to lose the ground work plane that I created because we're not going to need that anymore now that we have the foundation in place. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. So now we're going to constrain, flush constrain, the top of my foundation to the XY plane of the drawing. We're going to click OK and get these batteries out of the way because I also want this centered in the model. Since I built the foundation centered on a work plane, I can go in and grab the center axis of that one and find the center axis of the assembly drawing to get that in place. So now the foundation is centered in the assembly model. And we're going to go ahead and ground it so it can't move. Now if we remember, we wanted the battery, top of the battery is about 45 inches. So this is actually the top of the battery right here. Flush constraint. .45 inches above the foundation. And just estimating about centered on our stand. That's all we really need for reference. Now that is in place, we can go ahead and start building the walls for a battery stand. But first, let's get that file saved. Now it's time to start building our stand that's going to be sitting on top of the foundation. When I cast this foundation, I'm going to leave bits of rebar sticking up around the borders so that when the actual stand is cast, it will be firmly attached in place to the foundation. I went into the foundation, turned on the dimensions so I know what they are. So to start with, let's start creating the walls. A new part, and I'm going to, right at the beginning, we're going to go up here and set the material to concrete. Sketch on the plane here, and again we're going to need 2 rectangles, but we're going to start with the one. And going back and looking at the model again just for reference, here we go, it's 24 by 10. And we're going to want 1.5-inch walls. So we're going to go ahead and grab that, offset it 1.5. Finish that sketch. So here is going to be the base of the stand. Let's go back to the model because I don't know the distance between the top of the foundation and the bottom of the batteries. We've got 34.48. So we're just going to, of course, round that to 34.5. Back to my wall. Extrude 34.5. So there is the walls for the base of the stand. The batteries are going to have to be sitting on something, so we're going to have to build a little platform here. So let's just start another sketch here. I'm going to delete one of the inner lines so I don't have to worry about that. No, wait, and exit the sketch. Extrude. And we're going to go in the opposite direction. .5 inches. So there is the base of the stand. Now to continue upwards, we're going to start a sketch here at the base of the, or actually this is the base, that's the top of the stand. Start another sketch, and up here we're going to project geometry to get the inside and finish the sketch. Now let's go back here. How tall does this need to be? Let's take a measurement from here. Top of the battery, 10.52 inches. We're going to want some clearance there. So let's go back here. Extrude, and this is going to be the walls of the enclosure. I'm going to 10.5. I'm just thinking what I want. Let's go with 12 inches. So there is our battery stand where the battery is going to be sitting inside here. Let's get this saved. Actually, this is more of an enclosure than a stand, so I'm going to rename this. If I could spell here. I've got a microphone in front of my face that makes it a little difficult. Battery enclosure. Now let's go here. I just hit the character P on my keyboard, which is a hotkey for placing components. Battery enclosure. Let's do a little bit of constraining. We're going to constrain the top. And if we float here, we'll be able to see the other face. We'll apply and we'll go to flush constraints. And this should be the exact same size as the foundation. And let's take a quick look down through the top. See how the batteries sit in there. There is one edge. We've got plenty of room. Now, not so much room front to back. That's a little bit of a concern. I'm going to go ahead and constrain the battery to one end. Now let's take a look at a cross section. I've got a different version of Inventor at work, so these guys move around and sometimes it's a little difficult to find. A quick cross section, grab this face, drag it over. And my computer is lagging again. And you see, we just don't have enough clearance here. So let's open up our foundation and the enclosure 1/2 inch. And let's see if we're going to be happy with that. That gives us more than enough clearance in here for the batteries. And I'm going to want to put some kind of a lid on here. So what I'm thinking about doing, let's go back to our enclosure. Let's draw a sketch here. A line from the corner to the edge, and before I do this I have to make certain I've got that going the right way, so let's turn off our half section view. Yes, we have that going the right way. Do a Podoma, that's P-D-O-M-A. You will have to look that up to see what it means, of 10 degrees, and finish the sketch. Select extrude, wait for the computer to catch up with me. I'm going to cut distance through the whole thing. Okay. Zoom back out on here, go back to the assembly and see how it looks. I don't want any, whoops, there we got battery stuff sticking out the top, so we need to grow the assembly. This is also assuming I have those battery dimensions exactly on point, which is not likely. I'm going to measure from this face to, and it's not giving me an option for the center point. There it is. Not too bad, 1.76. So let's grow this thing another 1/2 inch. So we'll make those upper walls. Oh, I'm on the wrong one. See, I didn't label these as I was going on. So let's get these labeled. That's the base. This is going to be the shelf. This is the enclosure. And I'll just call this the lid. So it's the enclosure that needs to grow a ½ inch. Back to the assembly, taking a look at the right side. And we can't actually see the clearance, but I'm going to go ahead and change the enclosure appearance to, let's just say, a clear blue. And now we can see everything that's going on. Clearance all the way around. And everything is looking good. You know, the only thing that's actually missing here is we're going to need a drain in here. If this fills up with water, it's going to have to drain out. And other than that, I think this is basically done. And now I'm going to have to build a wooden form so that I can cast this in place after the foundation is done. Okay, the design of the form is just about done, and I saved you the agony of going through all my thought processes of how I was going to do that, but now we'll show you the results. Of course, this is the assembly, foundation, housing, showing the batteries inside, and here is the inner form assembly. This is the casting. Of course, it's going to be cast in place. I do not have the outer form walls ready yet. That's going to be pretty simple. We have 4 dowels pressed in here, which are going to be the spacer for the shelf that sits right in this area. We take a look at a side view, dropped this down in place. This is the shelf, where it's actually the bottom of the battery compartment. And you'll see how that will sit right there. These dowels will be loosely placed in the top of the form so that when everything's done, I can drive them out with a punch, leaving these holes there for drains. Also incorporated some drains down here, so anything that fills up the inside will be able to drain out. So, how did I go about doing all this? Here is the form, and I started with the wall of the form. Within the parameters, you can see here I have linked to the battery enclosure part file, and that is this right here. I'm linked to the dimensions of this, so if I change these dimensions, the form will change. Back to the parameters, and I've also decided at this level, this is the thickness of the boards I'm going to use to make the form. All the dimensions of the form are based on these dimensions. So if anything changes, everything gets updated. And the same applies for the other wall. You can see I'm linked here, and this wall is linked to wall 1. This is wall 2, this is wall 1. I'm linked to that. So if I change the thickness of wall 1, the thickness of wall 2 will update for me. And the shelf is basically linked the same way. And here I've got the holes drilled through there for the dowel pins that will be spacing it up. So now, where I'm at here, I need to create the form for the battery compartment. The XY dimensions for the upper form are basically going to be identical to this one. It's just the height changed, and of course it's inverted, flipped upside down. So the first thing I'm going to do, rather than recreating all of these, using the hotkeys Alt-F-A, we'll bring up the Save As. You can see right here, Save As dialog box. And we're just going to call this the top form. So now I have a new file that's exactly the same as the original one, using all the same parts. But now we need to change all of these parts. So starting with inner form wall 1. I'm trying to see which one that is. It must be on the other side. That's on this side. You can see the outline that I have selected. Inner form wall 1. I need to save that as another file. That way I can go ahead and modify it. Up here where it says create substitutes, I'm going to click on that pull down and select save and replace component. Brings up the create part dialog box and give it a new name. And we'll use the same naming convention except call it top form wall 1. Now we can see the new part up here is top form wall 1. We also have inner form wall 2, which is on this side. Pressing the hotkeys Control H brings up the place component, and we're actually going to be replacing that with top form wall 1. Now both of those are new part numbers. Now we're going to do the same thing to the inner forms. We're going to select one, Control H, top form wall 2. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to save it. I have to do a save as first before I replace it. So this is going to be a save as. Top form wall 2. Now we go over here and select the other one. Now we do the Control H, top form wall 2. Now all 4 of those have been replaced, and last one left here is the inner form shelf. This isn't going to be a shelf anymore. This is actually going to be the bottom. So we'll do a save and replace. Top form, bottom. Now all of these have been replaced. The spacers are not needed on this one. So we'll go ahead and select those and delete them. What I didn't mention earlier is I've added a couple of internal spacers to prevent these walls from collapsing once the weight of the concrete gets on them, because this is going to be probably going to be either MDF or particle board. I'm only going to need one of these spacers for the top form, so we're going to go ahead and wipe one of those out right now. And looking at everything here, all that has been saved. Do a save here real quick, and the last thing we're going to need to do is go into where all these are linked and break those links so that they don't get updated with other parts. So we'll start with the wall 1. This is the height, so we're going to wipe that out. It currently says 32.5. We're going to hard code that in there as 32.5. The width is going to be the same. It's just the height that is changing. And of course, this is also going to change. Now let's actually change the height. How did I go about doing all this? Measuring from the bottom of the concrete to the top corner right there. We've got 12½ inches. So let's drop 12.5 in there, and over here under export parameter, we're going to tick that share box. Now we're going to open up the side, go to the parameters down here at the bottom, link, top form wall 1, and you see this little green arrow right there indicates that that is a shared parameter. Going to tick that to change it to a plus sign. Okay, and there is the height. So we're going to, that's D4_1. Now the sides are all linked to the same height. Let's get this turned around to where this is actually how it's going to be sitting in there. And we're going to change our view cube over here. We're going to set that current view as top, and this is just a reference. It doesn't change any of the parameters of the model. I also want to change how it's viewed. This is how I want it to open when I open the file. So we're going to right click over here again, set current view as home, and I'm going to fit to view. So now when it opens, it will open in this orientation. Quick save here to make sure I captured everything that was just done. So now we're going to do our updates. We no longer need these drain holes. That wiped out the drain holes. And this spacer is actually going to end up probably right in that general areas. Last thing we need to do for that, if you remember my, let's go back and take a look. I've got a 10-degree arc here where I'm going to be putting a lid sitting on there. So let's go back to our form, open up one of the sides, form for the battery compartment. You can see one problem we're going to have here. We're going to have to change the constraints to this one to get it located properly. So there is our cut. Let's go turn around and get this fixed real quick. Now I'm wondering if wiping out all those constraints changed anything else. So what I'll do, let's see, there's issues right there. We had constraints to the bottom. And to the back. Now, quick grab, see if anything can move, and nothing's moved. We got to have it reconstrained. So the last thing I'm going to have to do is, when I build the form, it's just going to cut to fit. But for the model, let's get this done right. We're going to put a sketch on that side to the dimensions of this. So if I change these, and this is just for appearance, and I'm just going to get it close and cut through the whole part. Oh, and look what I just did. I just modified these two parts. Were identical. Now they're not going to be identical. So to fix that, we're going to go ahead and change the one that I know is correct. We'll call this wall 1 F for front. Anyway, top form. Now I need to take the front, save and replace. Top form wall 1 front. We'll do the same thing to this one, except, of course, we'll call that wall 1 back. So there is my top form. Let's get this inserted into the model. Here is my master form model. This will eventually encompass the entire form. Pressing P for place component and put in the top form. And we're spacing that off the bottom 1.5 inches because that's how thick the shelf is going to be. And then flush constraints. So now when I drop the model of the casting down on top, everything should line up. Oh, and we see we ended up a little bit too tall. I'm not certain why we ended up too tall. So, oh, I know why. I did not account for the thickness. This, I'm going to bet this is about 1/2 inch. 3/4 inch. I'm not certain why it ended up too tall. We'll have to go back and look at that and adjust the setting for the height of the upper form. And basically the inner forms will be done. At that point, now I'm going to have to just enclose the whole thing with a square box, and that will complete the building of the forms. Be sure to subscribe to follow this project and hit that notification bell to be informed of future updates.